Hello and welcome to Grow Conversations, your window into the world of medical cannabis here in the United Kingdom. My name's Alex Fraser, and I'll be your host. And on today's episode, we have the head of production at SafriCanna, Andrea Segal. So welcome to the podcast, Andrea.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's really great to have you here on the podcast. So, SafriCanna is likely a brand, a name that those watching may be familiar with already. But to get started, let's hear a little bit more about yourself and your journey, maybe before SafriCanna and how you ended up into the role that you currently have.
Okay, it's quite a long journey, but I actually started off in Humboldt County in California, which is, back in the day was the mecca of recreational cannabis. And I started off as a trimmer. And slowly worked my way up on the farm there actually to become a cultivator for a farmer. And eventually I decided I want to come back home to South Africa, and I was offered a position in a farm in Lesotho, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with, is a little country within South Africa, which also at the moment produces quite a lot of medical cannabis. Mm-hmm. So I was head of operations at a facility there. And then I got offered a position to come to SafriCanna, which is in Johannesburg in South Africa. Mm. And that's what led me to be the head of production here. I originally started off actually as head of processing, which is everything post harvest, which we can delve into a little bit later. But, harvest, curing, trimming, and all of that. And then worked my way up to head of production. So that's how I am here.
That includes cultivation as well, so that the actual growing and then the post growing as well, the production.
So I work with the head of cultivation here. So I'm not actually in charge of the growing of the flower, but I'm heavily involved in that process. But we do have a head grower who is dealing with all the issues that go on when you have to grow a plant. But my focus is, because we do so much work with the UK, my focus is on the good manufacturing of the flowers so that we can ensure that obviously our patients, your patients, get access to high quality medical cannabis.
Brilliant. You mentioned good manufacturing. We'll talk about GMP a little later on, I think. But I won't push you for the technicalities this early on. What would be really interesting to understand is that difference for you from going to the United States market back to, it was Lesotho, wasn't it, initially? But also, just before we move on, I think how incredible to have, started off as a trimmer, which is, quite a casual role, isn't it, I suppose, in a cultivation facility, and to now be where you're at. So, congratulations, first and foremost.
Thank you.
What a career transition.
To be honest, my love of cannabis, I don't know if I can say cannabis, but my love of, is that okay?
You can say the word on this. I know sometimes the social media algorithms don't like the word. We can use the word. YouTube's quite friendly.
Okay. But, my love of the flower actually led me on the journey. When I found out you could get paid to trim, I was like, where is this? And I'm very lucky to have experienced that side of the industry, because it really was like the wild, wild west. And slowly I was there actually when California also legalized for recreational purposes, and the market just changed so drastically. All these little mom and pop grows were taken out by big corporations, which is sad, but is how it is in, any industry when it becomes legal. My love for the flower just led me on a continuing journey into medical, because the more I learned about it, the more you truly start to not just believe, but see the results in it. And it was hard for me to not want to get involved in the side of it, even though, you asked, like, how different was it? It was like chalk and cheese, the compliance that we work through to get the product out at the level that we get it out to. Recreational cannabis just doesn't go through any of those hurdles. And it's quite interesting, because the more you get involved in compliance, the more you see how important it is, even for recreational patients, recreational users, to know what they are ingesting in their bodies and to know where it's coming from. So both for medical patients and recreational, it's super important. And yeah, it's been a very long journey. I'm 12 years in the industry,
Wow.
and very rewarding, very difficult. But yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Well, let's dig into some of those those most rewarding and difficult parts. Let's talk a little bit about where you've ended up on this 12-year journey so far. Let's talk a bit about SafriCanna and the company itself. Can you give us you know, I don't know the full biography, but can you give us the sort of how did it start off? What was the inception of the company? I'd also be really interested to understand, you know, why South Africa? Why is you know, obviously, it's a big part of the identity of the company with the name and everything else. So I'd just love to dig into that and understand it a bit
Exactly.
better.
So SafriCanna started, I want to say 5.5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago. And one of the main reasons why South Africa was chosen is it is an incredible place to grow cannabis. When you look at specifically where we're located in South Africa, the weather is unbelievable for cultivation. We have very dry weather, which cannabis loves. It's very, very sunny. We were just chatting about the weather here. Our winters are a good day in the UK summer. So we're very blessed on that from that perspective. Also because obviously of the workforce that we have here, it makes for big cultivation, agricultural cultivation. It makes it very accessible.
Mm,
Just also the costing per gram. When you look at something like where I was working, for example, in the US, the cost per gram is probably easily 10 times the cost per gram that we have here. So from those perspectives of finance, the weather, it made a lot of sense to come to Africa. Our CEO was also living in South Africa at the time and saw a great opportunity when they opened the market for medical cannabis to get a license and pursue this. So when I mentioned Lesotho, they were the first country in Africa to legalize medical cannabis. South Africa followed quite quickly after that. And because South Africa is the most developed African country, it's very accessible for us to get products throughout the world.
mm.
So it made a lot of sense to come here and to open this here from all the angles. And it's slowly but surely working out because it's a very difficult industry.
Yes, I mean it's not easy to be involved in medical cannabis, particularly as you sort of touched on already. Certainly at this very early stage in, I think, the global industry. I think we're still at quite an early stage. But yeah, it does seem to be working out for SafriCanna. Certainly have seen you know, a fair amount of success to date. Can you tell us a little bit about sort of where you guys are operating currently, where you're distributing to, perhaps, and the different markets that you're supplying?
So obviously the UK is a big market for us. You guys are wonderful customers, and I hope that your patients enjoy the products as much as we love sending them to you. And I'm sure everyone in Europe is also very aware that Germany is the biggest medical market. I think it might even be the biggest medical market currently globally.
Quite possibly.
Yes, they are blowing up. So Germany for us is a huge market. Australia was also quite big, but is currently going through quite a lot of changes that we're hearing from different people all around the world with regards to Australia. I believe, for example, Thailand has come up as quite a big cultivator, a cheap cultivator that's also producing good quality cannabis. That would make sense that they would go for like that side of the world. So Australia seems to be sourcing more from there. In saying that, we do supply to Australia, Germany, UK, Israel. We've done a little bit of Portugal. But yeah, so those are our big markets at the moment. We're
I
looking
mean,
to get into, sorry, yeah.
sorry, go ahead. Please finish.
No, we're looking to get into Poland and to any, new markets that are opening. I just saw France might be opening up as well. So it's fantastic because there's ever growing markets. Yeah, so we
This is it.
try to
There's a
get
few key that you sort of have to be in, don't you? Or at least be on your horizon. And you'd say Germany be that. It's the biggest in Europe. I think the UK possibly the fastest growing in Europe, although I know
Yes,
Germany's had a big boom recently from already
yes,
being one of the biggest, and then Australia is massive. But like you say, there seems to be um, some changes happening in the regulatory side of things in Australia. I'm not entirely sure what the outcome of that is at this point. I don't know if anyone is particularly, but it seems like the regulators are clamping down
yes,
on
there's
it
a
a bit.
change. And
This is it.
also, Alex, what's very interesting is the UK for us has been, as you said, it's one of the fastest growing markets, and it's been very surprising at
Mm,
how receptive people have been to it. We really didn't know what we were getting into. This is, I don't want to say the word trailblazer because it's one of those words, but it's hard being one of the first to do
yeah.
things. So when we come in and we are the first to come, one of the first South African companies to distribute to the UK, you never know what's going to happen. And we have been so pleasantly surprised at the growth and again the good reception that people are giving from our products, and South African products in general actually I think are doing really nicely. So UK definitely up there. I mean, it seems to be growing fast. So
Yeah. Well, we're obviously doing everything we can to make that happen, and to spread awareness of medical cannabis here in the UK. I think we are. Yeah, I think it's an incredibly exciting opportunity. I think we're a market that is set to have its own boom, but
mm,
is still growing from a very sort of small and humble beginnings into something quite considerable here. And we have
100%.
lots of fantastic brands now, and great to have product coming from all over the world, but fantastic to
Yeah.
have product coming from South Africa particularly. Um, so were you SafriCanna one of the very first in the country to get your GMP license? Is that fair to say?
So we are currently the only
The
company in
only.
Africa that has EU GMP Part 1. So we call it Part 1 because it means that we are able to provide final product to our customers. So final product, as some of your patients might know, are our little 10-gram bags that come, we package them here in our facility and we send them directly to the pharmacies, the distributors there. So it's very exciting. And it was a huge milestone for us, which we got 2.5 years ago. And we actually very recently, 2 months ago, had our EU GMP certification renewed
Well,
because
congratulations.
we, thank you so much. We passed our audit again, which is just absolutely massive. I think for anyone in the industry, they would understand the blood, sweat, and tears literally that goes into getting this kind of certification. It's not easy. And it really puts us a cut above the rest, especially when we're dealing again with prioritizing quality medical cannabis to patients. People need to know what they're getting and they need to know that it's certified in the right way. And it is just so important to us. So, yeah, we are the only African company. There is a company in Lesotho that have something called Part 3. So they can't do final packaging. They can only send, it's called an API. I won't get too technical, but so there's two of us that are doing really great work, but SafriCanna is just a little bit cut above the rest. So
Yeah, you can say that. It's not just a little bit, is it? Really, it's a
yeah,
considerable thing. It's
huge.
you're downplaying it, your successes. I appreciate the
I'm
humble
being
attitude, but
humble, exactly.
it is
Exactly.
impressive. I think it is, and I mean I know a little bit about GMP reviews and audits, mainly because our partners on calls are tearing their hair out and frustrated, and waiting for feedback, waiting for their results.
Yeah.
Could you maybe just give us an idea about what that's like to go through to get your GMP in the first place, but then also like, well, you had an audit to get it in the first place. You have another one to renew it.
Exactly.
Essentially, every time you've got regulators coming in, it's a lot of
So
work.
what's interesting is we have our own regulatory board called SAPRA, which is the South
Yeah,
African Health and Pharmaceutical Association. We have GMP through them. But then, as we were talking, we also have EU GMP, which is obviously the European Good Manufacturing Practices. To get this, I have to tell you, Alex, we have one of the best, and now I'm not going to be humble, we have one of the best compliance teams globally for cannabis. They are absolutely amazing. We would be nothing without them. I mean, I'm just merely head of production, but when you look at what our quality assurance, what our responsible pharmacist does for the company, I mean, every single thing is logged, is recorded, is, if a patient ever wanted to know some information, where did this flower come from? The traceability that we have to tell you
Mhm.
exactly when that clone was cut, the date that that mother was started, that the clone was taken from. We have every single bit of information, and that's a huge part of being GMP, especially at this level, is you need to be able to be completely transparent. You need to be able to show everything that you're doing in, an orderly, in a compliant way. And it's not easy because we're a staff of 106 people.
Wow.
Most of us have zero pharmaceutical background. A lot of us come from agriculture or, yeah, farming. And I mean, I came from zero compliance. So to get to this point where we are training people and the amount of SOPs that are followed, and to make sure that every single person is on the same page, is compliant, we're all working towards the same goal. It's no easy feat, and this is why so many businesses fail to get to this level, is you just can't all get there together.
Mm.
And then obviously the financial side of it is huge. It is not a cheap endeavor to go through. It costs a lot of money, and a lot of companies don't have access to that. So we are very lucky from all sides. We've just made it work and it's come together. And as you said, we had our first audit, we were re-audited. You have to go through this every 2 years. And I think that that's a testament to how stringent the compliance is, because if you're not being audited every 2 years, how do you know what you're getting 8 months after your audit? How do you know you're still following that procedure? So it's so important. I mean, I think everything just comes back down to, this is a medicine. We are using this for sick people.
Mm.
It has to be, rules need to be followed, and we need to know that what we're selling is of the highest compliance.
Yeah.
So that's our EU
It,
GMP.
it sounds like well, it sounds like an enormous amount of work, and it sounds incredibly frustrating to have to do it every 2 years. But you're quite right to say, you don't want to be letting standards drop at all. And this is, if there's any way to keep people on their toes, I suppose it's 2 year audits, but it still sounds like a lot of stress and a lot of work. And we thank you for going through it.
Yeah.
Considering it is so much, so much work and so much time putting into getting your EU GMP and keeping that. Um, what exactly does that certification mean for SafriCanna sort of going forward in terms of what you can do, or even currently what you can do that perhaps others can't?
So that's a great question. And it's actually the perfect time that you have asked, because for us, what this means is we're actually looking at expanding our business into becoming the biggest processing hub of Africa.
Wow.
We know, for example, companies in Portugal currently do this, which is where they will take flour and they will process it and turn it into EU GMP flour. So we are looking to do that for Africa. So we're looking at all grows in South Africa, Zimbabwe, Lesotho, Malawi. We want to turn our certification into a processing hub. We want to use this so that we can send as much flour as possible. There is a huge demand that cannot be met by one. SafriCanna cannot actually meet the demand at the moment. So for us to be able to bring on other suppliers and onboard them and turn them into EU GMP flour is something that we're currently doing, and it's a huge part of our 2025 goals. And that's one of the things that we're using our certification for, is to be that hub, so that people no longer need to send their flour to Portugal. You don't
Mm.
know what you're getting when you send it there. You lose a lot of the control because it's literally so far away. Here people can come, you can do a site visit, you can see the process that your flour goes through. So you're not losing full control.
Hmm.
Um, but for us, it's obviously very exciting, and it's a huge thing that we're very excited to start offering to people.
That sounds fantastic. I mean, ultimately, that will mean more medicines available from Africa, specifically South Africa. I imagine predominantly going in, Australia and European markets as well. And I guess
Exactly.
for those who might not be fully clued up about that process, essentially what you're describing is the other cultivators in the area that don't have the full GMP license, but do have GAP, so good agricultural processing is
Exactly.
is the necessity, isn't it, as that first stage? And then what will happen is they'll send product to you. Obviously, that's not going to be enormous distances like it would be if you were sending to Portugal from South Africa.
Spot
So
on.
they're sending that product down the road to get finished and finalized and certified as GMP product via you
Exactly.
guys because you have those
Exactly.
licenses.
So
Right.
we
Yeah, go
take
for
it
it.
from harvest, as you
Yeah.
said, from the
Yeah.
GACP supplier or GAP supplier. We take it from harvest and put it through all the processes.
Mhm.
So we know that it's being processed correctly, because drying is probably the biggest and most important step of any operation. So when you
Absolutely.
come to us, our drying rooms are validated. We have all the correct equipment. We know what we're putting in is what we know exactly all the steps. So it's yeah, it's a big offering for GACP suppliers as well.
Well, it's an enormous benefit for SafriCanna as well. Another string to your bow to be able to do this service, which obviously means you're able to provide more medicines to patients beyond what you're growing yourselves. I think that's a fantastic thing to be able to do.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about those sort of quantities involved. So how much well, how to phrase this? How much flower does SafriCanna cultivate on a cycle basis or a yearly basis, or give us a time frame that works?
So, what we aim to do is 3 to 4 harvests a month of
Okay.
about 100 kilos of dried flour per harvest. So, we
Wow.
look at about 300 to 400 kilos a month of flour that we are able to export. That comes from about, if we're looking at it from a cultivation perspective, we have about 2,500 plants per batch,
Wow.
somewhere in that vicinity. We lose some, we might have a bit extra, but it's about 2,500 plants that turn into 100 kilos. So we will take from a harvest about 500 to 600 kilos of wet flour,
Mhm.
put that in our drying rooms, and then from there, obviously, it goes through all the steps. What's very interesting for people who don't know, with cannabis, you lose about 75% of your flower mass to moisture, to wet weight. So people are like, wow, you harvested 600 kilos. It's like, no, 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 no.
That's going
That
to be
is unfortunately.
150 by the time it's
Exactly. There is
yeah.
nowhere near what we're getting out of it. But the beauty of the cannabis plant is every single piece is able to be used. So, for example, we only sell the flower
Mhm.
as SafriCanna, but we do sell our trim to an extraction lab here
Oh,
that does
okay.
all the extraction. They make amazing oils. Then you can use the bark of the cannabis plant for hemp fibers. So everything is used, nothing is wasted, and it's even though we're not doing all of that ourselves, we're able to sell it to people who are going to do that. So it's a pretty amazing plant from that perspective.
I had no idea that you guys were well, so green in that sense, I suppose, in terms of making sure that every part of the plant is used. You're not just destroying the waste product. I know some facilities do that. So that's lovely to hear.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you actually later on whether there was a plan for Safricana to release, I was going to say products beyond flour, oils, or other products. Um, is that how that will work potentially? That you'll use a third party to do extraction, maybe do your own
Yes.
oils?
So for now, we are not going to be going into extraction. I'm sure maybe in the next few years. For now, we need to focus. I think a lot of companies try to do too many things at once.
Mm,
And when you lose focus, especially from a compliance perspective, to have that EU GMP for dried flower product is in itself so much work for us to try and be compliant now for something like extraction that is a lot.
Yeah,
That's a full operation.
it's a whole
So
laboratory, right?
exactly, it's literally running a lab. So it's not something that is on our cards at the moment. We also have amazing extraction labs in South Africa that are doing an incredible job already. So for now, it's not on the cards. And also because we've taken on trying to be the processing hub, it's a lot. So yeah, we're just focusing in on that right now.
No, it's
Yeah,
totally understandable. you've got to, like you say, I think taking on too many things at once is well, it's something I've seen a lot of people do, and it doesn't seem to end well, particularly when you're working with something as complicated as a medical herbal medicine like cannabis.
exactly.
But you are about
Everyone's
to expand,
busy.
aren't you? You are getting bigger. How many
Yes.
staff members? You said 100 was it 106 staff members you've got currently?
We've got 106, that's right. And we are actually looking to do a massive expansion this year. I'm not 100% sure of the exact timelines, probably by September, October of 2025. Just to give you an idea, we currently have 4 flowering rooms. I believe it wants to be expanded to about 20 flowering rooms.
Wow.
So, yes. So, from that 300 kilos a month,
Yeah, I'm trying to
we
do the maths.
me
Please, yeah.
too. I honestly don't even concentrate on it because then I just start to have like a nervous breakdown. I'm like, what? I'm like, how are we going to process all of this? So I'm like, yeah, you guys expand. That's great. But, when we look at a country like Canada, for example, there are
Mm,
companies there that do 1 ton a month dried flour.
yeah, which is mad.
It's absolutely mad. It's mad. But I believe that this is something that SafriCanna would love to get to. It's a goal that we want to achieve. I don't know if we're going to get there in 2025 or 2026, but it's definitely on the cards for us. And the amazing thing is that there are markets for it. So, we're expanding because there's this huge demand.
Mm.
And it's very exciting. It's very overwhelming, but we have such an amazing team that we'll get there. And SafriCanna, and a wonderful part about SafriCanna is we've made all the mistakes. We've been there, like we 5 years old already, and we at a point where we know what we're doing,
Mm.
and we know what we're doing because we've made literally all the mistakes in the book. And I think that that's such a great thing for a company, is to reach a point where you're like, okay, I can do this because I know what I'm doing,
Yeah.
not because we've got money in the bank, so let's just do it. So the expansion, like I said, will be about 20 flowering greenhouses. We'll have a hell of a lot more drying rooms.
Mhm.
I'm going to have a trimming team of 50 ladies. That is the plan.
Wow.
You
And how
know,
many do you have currently on just on the trimming, just so we know what the
trimming, I've got 26. So we're looking
okay
to double
doubling
to
that.
double the team. And just as like a side note for any women who watch this, our whole GMP facility is women only. We
Really?
are very into, yes, women are incredible trimmers, and their attention to detail is wonderful. So because we do everything manually, which I think is also a huge advantage of South Africa. So when I say we do everything manually, I mean we are packing manually, we trim manually, the drying, we are debudding by hand. So it's a huge advantage because we're in South Africa, and women just have this wonderful attention to details. So, for example, those 10-gram bags that we pack, every flower is hand picked to go into the bag, and it's not some machine just kind of putting it into a bag and you get what you get. So we're very proud of our female team, and we're all about female empowerment. Yeah. Well, I'm making them all about female empowerment. They don't know it yet, but this is where we're going. But yeah, so those are the plans for the expansion.
Oh, I love that. I mean, it'll be all female plants and all female employees. I mean, that's and all female in every
Exactly.
sense of the word. But I suppose what you're
Exactly.
saying is you get that extra level of attention to detail, an extra level of care. But I think that's fantastic. I think I was going to ask you, what do you look for when you're building your team? What sort of skill sets? What sort of individuals? I suppose that gives me a starting point. Certainly cuts me out. Unfortunately, I'm very very sad. I'll
Well,
never
you can
be.
work also, you can work on the GAP, the
Okay.
GAP in the cultivation, because that's, tough man work. It's very hot in those greenhouses. And so what we look for, people who are obviously passionate about growing. It doesn't necessarily need to be cannabis, but you're passionate about growing, and you need to be open to learning. Because this is an industry where you can't turn around and say, "Oh, I've got a cannabis degree. I know what I'm doing." These are new things coming now. People just need to be open to learning. And obviously, it's great if you're a botanist or an agronomist and you can identify all of these issues. But again, it's so interesting with cannabis, because the people that are head growers, for example, in California, they used to say master growers.
Yes.
They were just your run of the mill guy who'd been growing for 20 years on his farm, and he's a master grower. So it's, again, I said you can get a degree in plant physiology and all the sciences, but the truth is you need to have hands on experience. Nobody will, I think that goes for anything in agriculture. The more you do it, actually do it, the more you learn. And yeah, we just, as I said before, about empowering people. South Africa is quite a poor country.
Mm.
So we do look to employ people that come from the local area, that, they really don't need to have anything except a high school. We call it a matric, a
Yeah.
high school pass, and an eagerness to learn. And you can join the team, because most of the work is very hands on here, and you don't need a degree. You just need to want to love these plants, because the more you love them, it's all energy. The more you love them, the more they love you. So
No, I love that. I think that's so true, isn't it? It's more about attitude than experience. Um,
100%.
and I think a lot of people claim experience in this space without necessarily being able to back that up on the ground. The idea of a degree, I'm not even sure there probably is now in places like California, degrees in cannabis,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I wouldn't. Great to learn about the plant's physiology. Great to learn about regulations. I'm sure there's lots of reading that needs to be done before someone
Mm,
comes on board. But the idea that you would need a degree to grow plants doesn't quite
mm.
equate for me. Then we'll get comments on YouTube being like, "No, that's absolute rubbish. Really helpful."
No,
Um,
listen, it's great when you know stuff, for sure.
yeah,
But everything I know about cannabis has come from just doing it. And
yeah. It's
really,
just no replacement. No.
you can't, there's no other way to do it for me. Also, what's very interesting is cannabis is so different everywhere you grow it. So somebody will come and tell you, "Oh, I grew it indoor and I'm an indoor specialist." Well, that does not mean that a greenhouse is going to be kind to you, because it is a completely different story. I would really struggle to grow indoors. I've never done
Yeah.
it before. I don't know how to control those settings. It's quite a big jump. So that's what's super interesting, is someone who does it well in Canada may not necessarily thrive in South Africa. The conditions are so different. So really, we just, like you say, we look for people who are open to learning and passionate and want to be here. Because when you've got that as a starting point, well, then you're good.
So important. Then you're going to engage with what you're doing. You're going to learn. You're going to hold on
Exactly.
to those learnings as well. Let's. Speaking of holding on to learnings, you mentioned. I don't want to put you too much on the spot, but you mentioned that you'd made all the mistakes, or SafriCanna had made all the mistakes. I wonder if you could talk us through maybe one or maybe even two of those, just so we get an idea of the sort of things that have happened, that potentially have gone wrong, how you responded, and I suppose fixed those things and carried on. I
Yeah,
suppose.
wow. So I think one of our, well, mistake challenge for
Mm.
us was finding good genetics. which is, everyone's like, oh, but there's a great seed bank in Canada and they're the best. And, it's kind of like what I just touched on is what works in Canada is probably not going to work here because we're a completely different climate and situation. And, we got genetics from all over the world. And it was a huge challenge for us. And pheno hunting
Mm.
is a long, arduous process that can take 2 to 3 years. And we don't have time to do a pheno hunt now and see which is the best plant from which seed. And so that was a massive challenge for us to overcome. A lot of the plants were hermaphroditing in the beginning
Mm.
because, again, they just weren't used to, for example, the sun here when they came from an indoor facility, or the nutrients that we were giving, or, so from that perspective, it was very, very difficult for us to find the right strains,
Mm.
which took time. And it's actually an ongoing process because we run a massive R&D facility as well, where we are constantly looking for the next thing that we can introduce, but that's going to be stable, that's going to give the right THC, that's going to have a good flavor profile. So these challenges were things that in the beginning, everyone thought, just grow, yeah, take some seeds. It's easy, just grow it. And you're like, oh my goodness, this is not working out at all. So that was a massive challenge for us. Another huge challenge was, well, mistakes that we made early on was not following correct regulatory practices before we had EU GMP. We went down the Portugal route. I mean, we had a time where we lost a 100-kilo batch to Portugal for bad processing.
Oh wow,
So it was really yeah, it was
so
not a
much to
pleasant.
lose. That must have been a sad day.
And then obviously all the markets just changing all the time. The regulations changed all the time. We had wanted to get into Israel for a long time. It was super, super difficult. We just could never seem to get it right. And then again, from the mistakes, we were just learning how to do that. So those were some of our big mistakes that we feel like we've overcome.
Well, and thank God that you did, and you managed that, and thank God we haven't lost any more 100-kilo batches either. So that, God, can you
Yeah.
imagine? I think you mentioned you're growing outdoors in greenhouses, and I suppose for those who are watching, who probably I obviously was aware of these things, working with you guys for a little bit, but can you tell us just sort of the basics about how the grow operation works? Perhaps a little bit about why outdoor, why greenhouse as opposed to indoor, and what benefits that provides you guys.
So we're not, and I wouldn't say we're an outdoor facility. I'd say we're a hybrid greenhouse, which means
Gotcha.
basically we're in a greenhouse, but there is like certain automation that takes place. So the reason why we don't do indoor and we do greenhouse is quite a few things. So first of all, the cost of an indoor facility is very expensive. You are running lights 24/7. You're not using natural sunlight. And something that I mentioned in the beginning of our chat was how amazing the weather is here. I mean, we have just incredible sunlight. To not utilize the natural sunlight would be an absolute waste. So that's why we do a hybrid greenhouse,
Mhm.
because we use the natural sunlight. And when, for example, it's an overcast day, we can use the supplementary lights that we have in the greenhouse already. And then for anyone who doesn't know, cannabis is on a 12-12 light cycle. So when it flowers, it needs 12 hours of light and 12 hours of darkness. So we have those automated blackout curtains that make the greenhouse complete darkness so that we're kind of tricking the flower. And yeah, we have a certain level of control in the greenhouse. I say certain level because, if it's 40 degrees outside, I can't bring the greenhouse to 27, but I can bring it down maybe to 33 or something. So it's in a more manageable way. We have a wet wall, we can cool the temperature down. We have fans to better circulate the air. So compared to a complete outdoor facility where you have no control, but you would have much, much, much bigger plants probably. And then compared that to an indoor facility where you have all the control, but much, much, much smaller plants. So there's pros and cons to every way that you grow. We are always trying to find like the perfect way at SafriCanna. So there was a time where the batches that we grew were 1,800 plants, then there were 3,000 plants, and now I think we've like kind of ended on a 2,500 plant because that's like our sweet spot, you know. So we're always trying to fine tune it and see like the best way to get the best flower.
Fantastic. And are you growing in soil then within the greenhouses, or is there? How does that work?
So we grow in cocoa coir. The
Sure.
reason why you don't grow in soil is it's just what's the word I'm looking for? It just brings a lot of disease and
Sure.
pests come into soil. You want to keep your environment as sterile as possible. So cocoa coir allows for that, and cannabis actually loves to be grown in there, and it's a wonderful, wonderful medium to grow in. So we're not like an aeroponics grow that's using, you know, all that fancy machinery. We're still like quite simple, you know, but yeah, so we do a mix of automated and hand stuff.
I imagine controlling feed as well would be, sorry, again, using slang, but nutrients, controlling the nutrients
Yes,
that you're giving the plants is probably a lot easier when you're not using it just direct into the soil. You're going to lose and things are going to seep out, aren't they?
exactly,
So just that
exactly.
extra level of consistency. It's fascinating because I think people understand indoor, outdoor, but this idea that there's the hybrid where you can sort of select bits of both worlds and make that work for you guys. And clearly
100%.
it is working for you guys because, like I say, you're producing some very lovely cannabis from all reports. So, um,
Oh, we
no, good,
try.
fantastic. And as you expand, I mean, I'm fascinated to see how things change. Maybe we can talk more later on about on a podcast in the future, and we can see if you've had
Yes,
to amend anything that you're doing to account for that larger scale. And oh God, I can't wait to
exactly.
hear what the
I
future brings.
can't wait to hear as well.
I'm sure you are particularly impatient,
Yeah,
but
no, listen, it's a constant learning journey, I must say. Like, you know, the expansions, like I said, very exciting, but there's going to be a hell of a lot to learn and to change and to
yeah,
amend and to, you know, and we're all for it. And that's the main thing. The team is ready.
yes. This is it. Well, fantastic to hear it. Look, I mean, it's been fantastic to talk to you about everything that SafriCanna is doing. Before we round this off, I think I'll not do one. I'll do two more questions if that's all right. I think firstly, um, how do you see SafriCanna's role in the sort of global medicinal cannabis market evolving over the next 5 years, apart from producing more product as we've sort of covered?
So for us, we would love to be a market leader. We are looking to, you know, again, through the expansion, through the processing hub, we do want to like pin ourselves as the place to get cannabis from in South Africa. We want our name to be synonymous with South African cannabis and the quality that comes out of here. So we would love to continue to grow. We're always trying to get into new markets. And getting into new markets is obviously also why we need to expand. We just don't have enough product right now. We actually just need to grow more. So we're definitely not shying away from hopefully being one of the big players one day with our name up there.
Up in lights,
Yeah.
LEDs. Anyway, sorry, terrible pun. Um, apologies,
What's on
audience,
the
for that.
road? Yeah.
Couldn't help myself. Very, very last question, and before we do round off as well, I just want to say a huge thank you for being on the podcast and giving us
No,
these
thank you for
insights
having
into
me.
what you guys do. It's been an absolute pleasure. As a last question, what is the sort of final message you would like to convey to the patients who are using your products, partners, perhaps the doctors who are prescribing them, about SafriCanna's mission and what sets you guys apart, what really makes you different? Your final pitch, I suppose.
Well, I think sorry if I'm a little bit repetitive from what we've spoken about,
It's all
but I
good.
think because we have a world class compliance team,
Mm.
you know you're getting quality products from SafriCanna. We're not a craft boutique grow. We don't grow 20 kilos a batch. You know, as I said, we grow 100-kilo batches, but I can tell you that those 100 kilos are going through all the correct steps that you would need as a doctor to feel confident to prescribe this to a patient, that what you see on the label is actually what the product is. It is grown with the highest integrity Um, and I know that when we process this product, we really do have the end patient in mind. So, as I said before, every single thing is done manually. We really care about what goes into a bag. And we take a lot of pride in our product. And again, I'm not saying our cannabis is the best flower. Our cannabis is consistent. You know what you're going to get when you open the bag. THC is consistent, flavor profile is consistent, our terpenes, and that's what's really important to us, is that we can deliver over and over again the same quality. And doctor and patient will always know when you see SafriCanna, you are getting quality. And that's what we stand by, and that is our mission.
Fantastic. Well, perfectly summed up, and really appreciate, like I say, you giving us your time and your knowledge and your expertise and sharing that with us today.
Thank you for having
Very
me.
excited. Very excited to see what's next for SafriCanna. We'll have to jump on a podcast in a little bit, maybe this time next year, and see what's
Yes,
changed, how much you're producing then per batch, how much is coming
please.
through you guys in terms of
How much you guys are selling?
exactly all of this and more then next time. But thank you
Yeah.
again one last
Thank
time.
you so much, Alex. Thank you.
And
Lovely to
thank you,
chat. Have
everybody.
a good one.
Yes, likewise.
Ciao.
And thank you, everybody, for watching with us today on Grow Conversations. We'll be back with another episode very, very soon. Thank you, and goodbye from myself and Andrea here.
Ciao.